we must do this in a relentlessly bipartisan nature. It's not going to work if this is a Democratic initiative, and it ain't going to work if it's a Republican initiative. There is not a line dividing the political aisle between those of us who have had, near us or very close to us, the tragedy of women's cancers. This is something that the nation, as a republic, has to address, and we have to do it together, or else it will not occur. I am very pleased to introduce one of the co-sponsors of this occasion, and I will make it short and sweet. I had a roughly 13-minute oration on behalf of Fran Drescher, so it does hurt me to throw away that line about a woman who needs no introduction. I would have loved to provide an introduction to Fran Drescher, but that joy was going to have to wait a little while, and I'd like to first introduce a wonderful co-sponsor and a terrific person to work with, Lisa McGovern, who is the co-president of Congressional Families Cancer Prevention Program. Lisa, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here partnering once again today with the Heinz Center and with the Executive Women in Government to raise awareness about the impact of environmental factors on health and specifically how they might relate to cancer. It's been a joy to work with Lindy Harvey of the Heinz Center on our shared mission to help reduce risks of cancer through education and outreach. We share a bipartisan, non-political approach, which has been so conducive to creating a wider tent. I want to thank the congressional spouses that are here today from both sides of the aisle and both sides of the Capitol to help promote this mission. Since 1991, the Congressional Families Program has been working with spouses from members of Democrats and Republicans from the House and the Senate and administration, and now with the Diplomatic Corps and their spouses to help fight cancer through prevention and early detection. I became executive director of the program more than 10 years ago, and I want to thank and recognize Carolyn Bo Aldeje, who is the president of our umbrella organization, the Prevent Cancer Foundation. It's been over 10 years that I've been working there, and I'm honored to introduce two of our best champions who became engaged long before I did. Susan Allen led a statewide breast cancer initiative during her tenure as First Lady when her husband was governor. I met Susan when George Allen was a senator, and we worked together on skin cancer awareness as well as breast cancer awareness issues. Susan is the consummate professional with an eye for detail and a brilliance for strategy. She has introduced me to some of the most important people in my life, including her sister-in-law, Kirsten Allen, who is also dedicated to raising awareness and funds to help fight cancer. I'm proud to call her my friend, and I'm thrilled that she's co-chairing this event. And speaking of friends, one of my dearest friends and mentors is Debbie Dingell, who is also co-chairing the event today. If there's a worthy cause, Debbie Dingell is no doubt there, leading the charge. She's been involved with cancer education for more than 3 decades, which means she must have started as soon as she could talk. Her energy seems to know no bounds, but she tested it this summer with a 3-day cancer walk, which she'll tell you more about. And I also want to recognize our 4th co-chair, Diana Enzi, wife of Senator Mike Enzi, who has taken her experience as a colon cancer survivor and used it to benefit and educate others. One of the things I love most about Diana is that when there's another spouse that's touched by cancer, and sadly too many are, she is the first one there to offer support and comfort. So thank you for your support of Congressional Families, Diana. So with that, I get to turn the program over to my friend who I admire so much, Susan Allen.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you. And it's a pleasure to work with Lisa so often, and it's great to have all of you here. Hi, everybody. We are so excited that you're packing this room, and there are seats up front, y'all. You can come join us up this way if you need to, but we're thrilled that the Heinz Center was willing to put together this wonderful bipartisan initiative on the prevention of breast cancer. Why? Because so many of you in this room are like millions of Americans. We're all touched by cancer. Every one of you here today has taken time out of your very busy schedule to spend time talking about women's cancers because you've been affected by it. And we all know that we're so close to finding cures and to finding the reasons that we have so many cancers, and we've just got to get there. Well, today's a real treat to be together. Certainly, we appreciate our time together with family. I'm lucky to have my sister, Kathy, here, and my sister-in-law is on her way. Our family's been touched by cancer, a grandmother, a mother-in-law, a sister-in-law at age 32, and way too many friends to mention. A best friend just this week in Richmond readmitted to the hospital after ovarian cancer was diagnosed several years ago. Today, it's in her lungs. We've all been touched way too often. So this bipartisan effort that is headed by the Heinz Center with the lead by Lindy Harvey is outstanding. Lindy Harvey is known around the greater Washington area as a person who has led many initiatives and worked diligently making sure that people are aware of all sorts of things. But I think Lindy has a special reason to really take heart this issue. She too had a grandmother at a very early age diagnosed with breast cancer and lost her way too soon. So Lindy, thank you for uniting all of us and bringing all of us together for this important cause with the Heinz Center. Debbie Dingell has already been introduced by Lisa, but Debbie will be rounding out this program today, taking questions and answers. And I've got to tell you, we have a super panel that you're going to hear from. Dr. Birnbaum and Dr. Lyerly, who are experts in their field. And of course, we know you really came to hear Fran, the nanny. She's going to tell you her story and talk about what she sees happening really around the world as she works on her initiative as well. I want to be able to introduce Fran at this time so that you can express to us why it's so important that you're on Capitol Hill with this bipartisan effort. Many of you know her from her award-winning TV show, The Nanny. You can't help but hear that voice and know that you're going to start laughing. And I think laughing probably helped you get through your own experience with uterine cancer. Fran's an actress of great accomplishment. She's won Esquire magazine's 5-minute Oscar for her memorable performance in the mockumentary The Spinal Tap. She's worked with lots of stars in lots of films, but she's most proud of starring taking her turn opposite Timothy Dalton in Beautician and the Beast, a film that she was the executive producer for. She's also an accomplished author. Enter Whining was her first book, and Cancer Schmancer, another bestseller, was her next. She's the recipient of the John Wayne Institute Women of Achievement Award, the Gilda Award, the City of Hope Women of the Year Award, the Hebrew University Humanitarian Award, the Albert Einstein College of Medicine Spirit of Achievement Award, among many others. She's a leading health advocate, the president and the visionary person of the Cancer Schmancer movement. She was instrumental in getting the U.S. First Gynecological Cancer Education and Awareness Act passed into law and is now working with the Center for Disease Control and Prevention to use the appropriated funds to best reach all women. Fran's also been appointed to the distinguished position of Special Diplomacy Envoy for Women's Health Issues by the U.S. State Department. And on June 21st, 2013, Fran celebrated 13 years of wellness as a uterine cancer survivor. Way to go, Fran, and welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today. Fran Drescher.
Well, hello, everybody, and thank you so much for attending today. I'm really delighted to speak to you on an issue that is so near and dear to my heart. As you know, I am a cancer survivor. It took me 2 years and 8 doctors to get a proper diagnosis with uterine cancer. I got in the stirrups more times than Roy Rogers. And, you know, I slipped through the cracks every step of the way because the cancer that I had, actually, I was atypical for. Usually, it affects women that are either postmenopausal or obese, of which I was neither. So I kept being misdiagnosed for a perimenopausal condition that I didn't have. And I realized afterwards that by the grace of God, I was still in stage 1. And I feel like I got famous, I got cancer, and I lived to talk about it, so I'm talking. And I wrote what became the New York Times bestseller, Cancer Schmancer, because I didn't want what happened to me to happen to other women by means of misdiagnosis and mistreatment. When I went on my book tour and I started speaking to tens of thousands of people, I realized that what happened to me has happened to many Americans and continues to happen to many Americans. So I began to form ideas about how to reform health in this country and how we, as patients, can transform into becoming medical consumers. Because the very word patient implies passivity. And I think that that is back in the old days of the 20th century. And here we find ourselves on the precipice of a new dawn in this 21st century. And the time is now to start rethinking so many things that are impacting our lives and impacting how early we may get detected with a whole host of diseases that we may get. Usually the reason why we lose loved ones to cancer is almost always due to late-stage diagnosis. And why we don't get diagnosed in stage 1 is beyond me, but that's something that we can help by simply becoming medical consumers and recognizing what the early warning whispers are of the cancers that may affect us and knowing the tests that are available, because all too often that's not even on the menu at the doctor's office. So prevention became, early detection became the cornerstone of the Cancer Schmancer movement, which came out of the book Cancer Schmancer, which I realized once I went on the book tour was not the end, but just the beginning of what has now become a life mission. And then prevention, of course, and policy change. Prevention, I think, is something that's been quite underrated in our culture. And there's been a great emphasis put on cure ever since Nixon waged the war on cancer. So I believe that if you can catch it on arrival, 95% survival, if you can live holistically a more healthy lifestyle, you may reduce your risk of cancer in the first place. And to me, not getting cancer is the best cure you can possibly find. So we at Cancer Schmancer began to explore how we go about doing that. And what is the real problem? Well, 1 out of 2 men are anticipated to get cancer in their lifetime. 1 out of 3 women. The children of today, for the first time in U.S. history, are predicted to not live as long as their parents. Babies are being born pre-polluted with 200 to 300 chemicals found in the umbilical cord. And American women's breast milk has the highest percentage of flame retardant in it from any woman on the planet. And we're all scratching our heads and wondering, why is cancer and disease and learning differences and autism and brain problems like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's closing in on us? And frankly, America has cure fatigue. We've signed the checks, we've taken the walks, now where's the cure? I think that we need to become proactive. We stand on the precipice of a new dawn. It's the early 21st century, and historically, great visionaries' ideas take hold at the beginning of a century. When we think about where we were 100 years ago in 1913, women with men standing by their side were marching and picketing to get the right to vote, to change an entire nation's thinking, to make them count, to make them be included. Today we have the vote. How we use it is up to each of us as individuals. But we remain, in spite of the fact that we have lifted the ceiling somewhat in the workforce, and we have many more opportunities than we had in 1913, women remain the caregiver to the child, the spouse, and the elder in almost every home nationwide, as well as worldwide. So we are the ones that take care of our families. We also are the largest consumers. We are the ones that make the doctor's appointments. We are the ones that make sure there's food on the table, clothes on our children. We are the ones that dictate the products that are being brought into the home. We are the ones that have the capability to impact this effort and make a difference in the way that the women of 1913 did. Now, Cancer Schmancer organization is launching the Detox Your Home campaign. We want to make Detox Your Home the don't drink and drive of the 21st century, to create a groundswell of consciousness raising, to be the game-changing, flip the switch, awakening. Because once you wake up and smell the coffee, it's hard to go back to sleep. Now, why detox your home? Well, over 90% of cancers is environmental. And as it turns out, the home is the most toxic place we all spend the most time in. The air pollution alone in our home is worse than standing across the street from an oil refinery. What we bring into our home can make a wealth of difference in hedging against many, many diseases. And we have started the concept of making it very easy for Americans to understand, what are you putting in, on, and around you? In your mouth, on your skin, one of the largest organs in the body, all personal care items for you, your family, your children, your husband. And then what are you cleaning with and what are you gardening with? This makes it doable, understandable. I'm a successful television writer. I know how to reach the American every man and woman with a very simple call to action or a single line. You don't sell a television show unless you can say it in one single line. Think of The Sound of Music, only instead of Julie Andrews, I come to the door. Boom, the nanny. You know, my last series, Happily Divorced, me and my relationship with my gay ex-husband, sold. So if you can say it in a single sentence, you've got it. And I believe that Detox Your Home is the beginning of a groundswell to get the every man and woman, the consumer, in a bipartisan way, because poor health is the great equalizer. It does not know party affiliations. It doesn't know what nationality or religion you are or ethnicity you are. All it knows is that if you are going to continue to bombard your immune system with a whole host, a myriad of different toxins and chemicals that combined can create a cocktail that might be deadly, you're putting yourself at a grave disadvantage. And when half of the male population are expected to get cancer in their lifetime, we are slipping down a rabbit hole towards our own demise. Now, I understand that it's difficult sometimes to see the frame when you're in the picture, but I can see it because I have that kind of spatial visionary thinking. And I feel with great confidence that if we can educate, motivate, and activate Americans to start making healthier choices without regulation, we can move very quickly and through good old-fashioned all-American consumerism and the power of purchase, dictate manufacturing trends. Now, Congressman Deutsch, actually, a Democrat came to me and said, based off of him being inspired by this kind of a talk that I gave, and I said and he said, I have kind of an idea for an initiative, and what do you think about it? And I heard it, and as you know, was stated, I was involved, very involved in, pushing through the Gynecologic Cancer Education and Awareness Act by unanimous consent. So all 100 senators said yes to that, and as a consequence of that, I was written up twice in the Congressional Record, and under the Bush administration, I was appointed to, underneath Condoleezza Rice as a vetted a Public Diplomacy Envoy for health issues under the U.S. State Department, a title I continue to hold to this day, and have been sent by the State Department all over the world to all of our allied nations as well as our military bases, spreading this message that the jig is up and we have to start cleaning up our act. And we as citizens cannot wait for the man to tell us because, A, no one can afford to pay for that. So we have to use our own good sense. And there's no downside to living a little cleaner and a little more thoughtfully about what we bring into our home. And we have the power to dictate the direction that manufacturers go, because at the end of the day, manufacturers don't want to kill us. They simply want to sell us. And they will sell us anything that we're prepared to buy. So we at Cancer Schmancer are setting up a massive multimedia campaign that will include a large body of highly recognizable celebrities and athletes to get the conversation going in America to detox your home, in the same way that it had to be done to buckle up for safety, or don't drink and drive, or don't be a litter bug. This is all just consciousness-raising, game-changing ideas that elevate a nation into a new realm of thinking. And then you look back and you say, God, how did we ever do that? Well, that was the Dark Ages. You don't know what you don't know until you know it. And then when you know it, it's time to embrace it. So we have an education program in place, which will have a very viewer-friendly presentation, assembly program for elementary, high school, and university students to understand how to detox their home. And then we have this massive campaign that we are aligning all of our, partners that are like-minded with us. And then we have this policy that we hope we can get bipartisan support. It is gaining traction on both sides of the party. We had Congresswoman Myrick, who is a wonderful Republican from North Carolina, who was diagnosed with cancer the same year as myself, and we bonded over that. I said to her, the year 2000 really sucked, didn't it, Congresswoman? And she said, it sure did, Fran. And she's since retired. So in this new Congress, we're going to reintroduce it, and we need to get bipartisan support. We need to write it so that everybody can take ownership of it. But the idea is there, and the bones are up, and it's ready to go. And there's a lot of people out there that feel this way. There's a lot of, Teresa Heinz and myself and all of the people that work with us alongside and under, and many, many other organizations like Breast Cancer Fund and Environmental Working Group and Banned Plastic Coalition and Water Keepers Alliance, and the list goes on and on and on. Global Green. Places, groups that have millions of followers that believe that something's got to give. What's wrong with this picture? How could this be happening? And how could this be closing in on us to this degree? Well, we have the power to change all that. We, the everyman and woman, and through the aforementioned different objectives, I think that we will. And I implore you to join us, to become active, to help us to realize this vision and this dream, not only on a policy level, but on a activist level, on a, education level. All of it needs to be a daily practice. And just start with your own homes and start reading labels and hopefully we'll pass this bill, and you'll just have to look for that little gold seal, so you don't have to go to MIT to understand what the ingredient banks are. You can just look for that gold label when you're buying food or personal care items for you and your family, or cleaning or gardening. So I thank you for hearing me out, and later I'm happy to take any questions. And now I'll turn the floor over to this lovely woman.
Thank you, Fran. Thank you. You did a great job. Fran's on a terrific mission and has spent the day on the Hill, has some other events this afternoon, but thank you for your time here today and for really pushing forth this effort. You're a great role model, and many of us will want to follow in your lead. You have many members, staff members here from different offices, spouses of elected officials, and general activists who want to really work hand in hand with you as you go forward. And the Heinz Center and Lindy Harvey are to be credited for bringing everybody together. We now have a wonderful expert in the field of science and what has happened with cancers in the environment. Dr. Linda Birnbaum is the director of the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences of the National Institutes of Health, and recently completed a congressionally mandated and funded research study on breast cancer and the environment, prioritizing prevention. A highly recognized and sought-after expert in this field, please welcome Dr. Birnbaum.
Well, thank you very much. It's really a pleasure for me being here. I just wanted to mention that the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences is the one institute that is not here. We are in the southern part of heaven, and so I invite you all to come down and see us in North Carolina at some point in time. But I'm really here today to tell you about the research we're doing to discover how the environment may contribute to diseases such as cancer. Much of our research focuses on the issue of prevention. So although scientists have identified many risk factors that increase a woman's chance of developing breast, uterine, and other cancers, we don't always know actually how that happens. In 1994, NIEHS researchers isolated a tumor suppressor gene I'm sure you've heard of called BRCA1. And this discovery and the subsequent discovery of the BRCA2 gene led to a greater understanding of how genes can predispose to cancer. But it's become really clear that it's not just our genes that lead to the tremendous increase that has occurred in cancer really over the past 100 years or more. In fact, most women who get breast cancer have no family history at all. So we agree now that breast cancer and other cancers are caused by a combination of both genetic and environmental factors. I often say that you can't change your genes, but you can change your environment. And that's why environmental health research is so important. It gives us vital information of how we could change our environment to prevent disease and promote wellness. Now, it's estimated that environmental factors account for, I think you said 90%, I'm not going to be quite as generous, I'll say 2/3 of breast cancer cases. But your environment is everything around you. Environmental factors include lifestyle choices like nutrition, alcohol consumption, cigarette smoking, exercise, sunlight, and sexual behavior that may increase exposure to certain viruses. Other environmental factors include exposure to medicines, hormones, radiation, bacteria, and environmental chemicals that may be present in the air we breathe, the water we drink, the food we eat, and the homes or workplaces which we inhabit. At the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences, we dedicate more than $112 million, which is 20% of our budget, to cancer research. And this includes nearly $35 million, which is focused exclusively on women's cancers. We know, for example, that a female breast undergoes many changes over the course of a lifetime. Although they may seem to occur gradually, there are specific times in our lives when more rapid changes take place. These occur during distinct time periods, and when cells are rapidly dividing and changing and growing, they are more susceptible to being impacted by environmental exposures, which can impact the rate and the risk of our developing breast cancer. Now, we call these specific time periods windows of susceptibility, and much of our new research is focusing on these critical periods of development when we know that the breast is most susceptible to the effects of environmental hazards. In 2003, NIEHS partnered with our larger sister, the National Cancer Institute, to start the Breast Cancer and the Environment Research Program. And the goal of this program was to study the impact of fetal and childhood exposures that can affect puberty and predispose a woman to breast cancer. We look at the molecular changes that occur normally in the breast across the lifespan and compare those to changes that occur when there's been an environmental impact. Ultimately, we are hoping to be able to provide valuable public health information to young girls and women about what they can do to reduce their risk of developing breast cancer. Now, in 2009, we extended this program to continue research on puberty in young girls and to employ or to support broader multidisciplinary teams of scientists. We have found detectable levels of those 200 to 300 chemicals that you mentioned, Fran, in young girls, and we are trying to follow up to determine if these chemicals are associated with changes during important developmental periods, especially puberty, that have been implicated in increased risk for breast cancer later in life. This is extremely important with our understanding that diet, hormone replacement therapy, and long-term exposure to agents such as endocrine disruptors may be associated with cancer development. Now, in October 2008, led by Representative Sue Myrick, the Breast Cancer and the Environment Research Act was established, and that led to the development of a committee that involved not just feds, not just scientists, not just health professionals, but also breast cancer advocates who represent individuals with breast cancer. Both NIEHS and the National Cancer Institute were the leaders for this effort, and earlier this year released a report that was mentioned on prioritizing prevention. So at the NIEHS, our research portfolio is incorporating the recommendations from this report as we establish a clear and actionable path that is very much in concert with our strategic plan. We're also trying to understand how the environment and genetics works together. And from 2004 to 2009, we recruited over 50,000 women from across the country, from all the different ethnic groups in our country, who were women who had a sister that had breast cancer. Because these women not only have shared genes, but they also have shared environments and shared experiences, this provides us a greater chance of identifying risk factors that may help us find ways to prevent breast cancer. So far, we don't have clear information on the cancer risk, but I can tell you that it's clear that taking your vitamins is good for you. And we've had some really important new findings that fertility treatment for young women is not associated with an increase in early onset breast cancer. And I think that is a very positive, reassuring finding. Now, Fran, you mentioned flame retardants, and they are all over the news. So the highest production volume of brominated flame retardants in the world is a chemical called TBBPA, which is a derivative of BPA, which I think you've probably heard of. But the global production of TBBPA is over 200,000 tons a year. It's the largest of any of these chemicals, and it is kind of flown under the radar screen. It's routinely used in electronic circuit boards and in plastic piping, automotive parts, and appliances like refrigerators. But now we're finding it in the environment, we're finding it in house dust, and we're finding it in people, including umbilical cord blood and in breast milk. Recently, my National Toxicology Program, which is a multi-agency effort, showed that rodents exposed to TBBPA had an increased incidence of aggressive uterine cancers. Now, trying to understand how this happens, and I don't normally focus on some of my own little research, but my research did show that TBBPA can lead to excess estrogen, which can cause excessive growth of the endometrium, which is the lining of the uterus, and thus lead to cancer. So maybe this is a mechanism of some of the increase in uterine tumors that we're seeing. We're also getting a better understanding of tumor growth through studying benign tumors. So uterine fibroids are extremely common, and as expected, larger tumors are more likely to cause health problems than small tumors. But we don't really know very much about what causes these tumors to grow. So we have initiated a fibroid growth study, which looks at the difference between fibroids that grow rapidly and those that don't. And we believe that the data that we'll generate from these benign tumors will provide us a lot of information on the growth of malignant cancers as well. Another interesting study I'd like to quickly mention is that NIEHS investigators have demonstrated that nighttime exposure to artificial light can stimulate the growth of human breast tumors in mice, by suppressing the levels of melatonin, which is a key hormone in our bodies. Maybe this is why female night shift workers have higher rates of breast cancer than the general population. And maybe this could be a partial explanation for the rise in breast cancer incidence in industrialized countries where we have a great deal of light pollution. So these are just a few examples of the cutting-edge research that NIEHS is supporting to help combat women's cancers and promote wellness. Many of these efforts are captured in my NTP's report on carcinogens. This is a congressionally mandated, science-based, peer-reviewed public health report that identifies agents and substances and exposures in our environment that may potentially put people at increased risk for cancer. Now, thanks in part to a greater awareness and enhanced medical treatment, we have seen a decrease in the mortality associated with women's cancers, despite the increase in the incidence of these cancers since 1975. We've also seen a decrease in the incidence and death rates associated with gynecologic cancers over the past 35 years. But breast, ovarian, and uterine cancers impact individuals without regard to nationality, race, religion, socioeconomic status, politics. We are all in this fight together. By combining the best science that NIH has to offer with our academic and our nonprofit partners to develop novel approaches to educate women, we can empower them to make healthy choices for themselves and their families. We can help protect women from these preventable diseases. As I often say, you can't change your genes, but you can change your environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Birnbaum. Good job. I'm sure that elicited many questions from you all, and Debbie Dingell will be taking questions at the, as we wrap up here. But we also want to hear from the next doctor who is here with us today, another expert, Dr. Kim Lyerly, a medical doctor and breast cancer surgeon, and serves as the George Barth Geller Professor of Cancer Research at Duke University School of Medicine. Dr. Lyerly offers great insight into how these same environmental risk factors can negatively influence the effectiveness of treatment following diagnosis. Thank you for being with us.
Well, again, it's great to be here, and it's a terrific challenge to follow two really wonderful comments, both from Fran and from Linda. So again, one of the things that I wanted to do was really emphasize how important it is to recognize that genetic factors are so important, but have really proven not to be the end-all to be-all for cancers. And one of the best examples of that, the one that I really think is an important message, is a study of 45,000 sets of identical twins. And this was a study published about 10 years ago in which, as you know, a twin is essentially the closest thing we have of a clone to an individual. These are identical twins in which the genetic material is completely duplicated. And the study was, over a period of 85 years, what would be the risk of breast cancer or other forms of cancer in an identical twin if they had an identical twin that had breast cancer or another form of cancer. And for many people, they thought this was going to be the convincing story that our future is our genes and our future is preordained by what we were born with. And it turned out for these 45,000 sets of twins, the risk of a twin that had a sister that had breast cancer was 13%. It was not 90% or 75% or 80%. It was 13%. And so there was a reorientation that perhaps it wasn't simply genetic factors that were contributing to the risk of cancer. The other thing that's happening in our world, and I think we all recognize we live more in a global community, and this, Fran was talking about how that the turn of the century is an important milestone for events in humanity. It turns out in this past decade, we have had a shift between the causes of global mortality, where now the major causes of death around the world are what we call chronic diseases. It's shifted to infections, tuberculosis, malaria, diarrhea, and those populations that don't have access to sanitary conditions and so forth. And so we've now shifted to a global cause of death due to chronic diseases. And for an example of how this relates to cancer, as a medical student at UCLA, I was taught that Asian women didn't get breast cancer, and so it was not really much of a concern. But we know today in China, with a population of 300 to 400 million women at risk for breast cancer, this is the major cause of mortality, Chinese women getting breast cancer at a very early age. Really dramatic change, and clearly not a shift in the genetics of the Chinese women, clearly not a shift in their genetic predisposition to cancer, but clearly related to something external to that. And I think this is why there's an increased focus, not simply based on laboratory experiments, really profound insight into the biology of how the environment can affect cells, but really global statistics about these major shifts in what's causing death and morbidity around the world, and then fundamental insight into in those inherited traits that were presumed to be the profound influence on risk and have turned out not to be. So we're very enthusiastic about the idea that prevention and early detection through surveillance are key, but we're also aware that we live in a world in which we have been successful in the treatment and management of many women and individuals that have had cancer. And so there are tens of millions of cancer survivors that exist today. And what we began to think about was we know that there's an influence of the environment on the origin of the cancer cell. Would the influence of that environmental signal or the feeding of those cancer cells continue on after you had a diagnosis of cancer? And what we have found, again, two bodies of evidence, the evidence from what happens to populations of women with breast cancer and evidence in the laboratory. Let me tell you about what happens to women with breast cancer. As you know, we now recognize different types of breast cancer. Probably the more common type is one called estrogen receptor positive breast cancer, very common in postmenopausal women, probably related to estrogen exposure, and usually has an excellent 5-year survival, probably in the 95% range, where you will be alive at 5 years with effective therapy. In contrast, there's a form of breast cancer called triple negative or basal cell carcinoma, in which the estrogen receptor is absent and there are no other growth factors that are known for this form of breast cancer. And instead of having a 95% survival at 5 years, you have 3 to 4 times the rate of death. And so your survival may only be 75% at 5 years with a triple negative breast cancer across the board. We thought that this is clearly a major difference in these forms of cancer. And of course, if you were going to have cancer, God forbid, you would want to have a estrogen receptor positive breast cancer, because at 5 years, you're much more likely to be alive. But if you fast forward, and now we have data from very large cohorts of patients treated around the country, at 20 years, if you had a triple negative breast cancer and you were alive at 5 years, you were 95% likely to be alive at 20 years. And so it seems like the bad prognosis breast cancer, you got treated with whatever you needed to get treated with, but you maintained yourself. In contrast, with an estrogen receptor positive breast cancer, you continue to suffer from recurrences and metastases. So at the end of 20 years, you have a worse prognosis at 20 years with an estrogen receptor breast cancer than you had with the triple negative breast cancer. So what we thought initially was the beneficial or beneficent cancer, indolent, if you will, over time, whether it's exposure or whether it's a failure of the therapy from working, but these are tumors that respond to anti-estrogen therapy. So it caused a lot of people to begin to explore, what are the roles and what's in the world that would have an impact on anti-estrogen treatment. And in fact, these same molecules that we're identifying that perhaps contribute to the origins of cancer have a profound effect on the therapies that we're giving. And if you are exposed to BPA at high levels, your anti-estrogen therapy does not work effectively. So laboratories around the world have made this connection. And what we're doing is exploring all forms of therapy and the utility of exploring how the more advanced forms of therapy, the targeted therapies, the new anti-HER2 therapies are also influenced. And we're finding very similar results in which many forms of therapy, the therapies that are preventing recurrences, the therapies that are keeping you from having a metastases or an expansion of a clinically occult tumor, they are also influenced by these same environmental signals that have initiated cancer in the heretofore normal cells. You can imagine they maintain the growth and prevent the therapies from being as effective as they should be. So the reason these things are so important is because they do contribute to our knowledge, and they allow us to focus our attention perhaps on those individuals who may be at greatest risk for environmental exposure, not only those that have perhaps a genetic susceptibility to cancers, but perhaps those cancer survivors or those on active therapy, and what are the perhaps balanced views or perhaps even responsibly cautious views of managing the environmental exposures to those individuals under therapy. So again, this is, I think, a phenomenal opportunity. We are in the throes of a time in which relationships between bodies of information are being explored and hopefully utilized for good. One example of that is the utility of using databases in which environmental exposure and environmental toxin levels are identified and perhaps are at state registry levels, and they are embedded and they're very important data. But can we create cross-cutting platforms that allow us to share that environmental data with health outcomes data to really make the connection between the exposure levels and the potential not only onset of disease levels, but perhaps the outcomes of treatment in these environments. And this is, I think, the importance of having such an open dialogue, for having a bipartisan view, by having a perspective that we know that there are scientific underpinnings, and we want to explore the utility of utilizing the information that exists currently in ways that are appropriate and that are responsible and that allow us to advance studies that will help inform us to help improve the lives of those patients that have cancer and their families and for those at risk for cancer.
Just sharing with us, Fran, for your energy, your willingness to bring attention to the issue, and what you've done in making women get excited and pay attention is just incredible, what you've done the last decade. And to you two doctors, the work that's being done, not only for educating us today, but the real basic research that's occurring, you're helping to save lives. And we really want to thank you for that. I sit here today and I think about, I hate to say that it's been 3 decades or more than 30 years since we really did. Susan and I worked together almost from the very beginning. Neither of us is that old, but we're kids. But I sit here and we didn't use the word breast. People really don't understand that women were not included in research that was funded by the federal government because we had hormones. 50% of the population research wasn't being done on when we all started working together. And when we as women came together, in those days spouses were women, they weren't men. This is, 3 decades, thank God we work and we're more men now. But we didn't look at things in a partisan way. And now I'm looking at friends that I have in here. There are a ton of congressional spouses, and we can't introduce everybody, but I do want to introduce 5 because you're survivors. You're cancer fighters and survivors, and you're our friends. And I may have missed somebody. This is who I saw come in the room. Diane Enzi, Lander Reed, Marcel Leahy, Janet Waxman, and Barbara Grassley are cancer survivors and our friends. And Marcel, who am I missing? Yeah, you said it? Marcel, yeah. I mean, you're our friends, and you've kicked butt, and we're so happy we're here with you, and you're doing well. So we're glad about that. And I am proud to serve on the Heinz Center Bipartisan Initiative on the Prevention of Breast Cancer Advisory Board, and Susan serves on that with me. Lisa McGovern, Patricia Kempthorne, and Agneta McBride have been on this. And I look at, they're great. Yeah. And Doctor, we love you. Your energy, your twinkle in your eye brings that energy, and yes, you. So we thank you. And it really, as I sit here today, I look at us as friends and all that we have gotten done. And we as spouses are lucky enough to have a platform that when you take the time to educate us, get involved, and get out there, we can go out and help educate in our states, our districts, help educate people so that they can learn lifestyles, they can prevent, and they can advocate. And we have gotten, I will tell you, it was the work of congressional spouses that helped get women included in federal research, and that made a difference. But we've only got a few minutes, and we've got 3 of the top talents in the country here, so I want to move and ask the audience if you've got questions, if you raise your hand, and if you would identify yourself by name and organization before asking your question.
Well, Fran, I have one. This is Lindy Harvey with the Heinz
Lindy.
Center. And what I'd like to ask you is, here we are together, a great group that have come to hear you and Dr. Birnbaum and Dr. Lyerly today, and those that will be sent this video on our email. And we need to make sure that our friends, our family, our colleagues, our coworkers, our neighbors know about this information. So perhaps you could give us some recommendations. How do we do that? You know, I remember the commercial that said, tell a friend, and I am one of those that tells lots of friends. But maybe there's a way that we can share this even more so. So maybe you've got some recommendations on what we can do when we leave this room today to get the word out.
So, you know, we have to start looking at ourselves. Forget about saving the world. Save yourself, save your family. Start there. And then your energy and your awareness will just naturally seep in through osmosis to your neighbors, your community, and your extended family. Go on the cancerschmancer.org website. We have something called the Good Guide. You can plug in most products that you are presently using. Maybe gives you a warm, fuzzy feeling because your mom and your grandmother bought it, but maybe isn't the best thing for you, and you can start looking at that. So next time you go shopping, don't throw out your products because you paid hard-earned money for it. But when it's time to replace them, start looking for things that are much, much simpler. So we got to dial that back. And things as simply as, what are you brushing your teeth with? What are you putting under your arms? What is the sunblock that you're using? These are the things that you use every single day that you have to start questioning. And then what are you eating? Eat simpler, whole foods. Try and eat as much organic. And nowadays you can get organic food from Walmart to Whole Foods and every place in between. You can go down the aisle and, you know, for me to eat like a bowl of organic millet and some organic black beans or kidney beans, I'm in heaven. And that's not expensive. So, and it's so healthy for you, and you feel so great in it, eating it and things like that. So, and then cleaning. We teach people to clean with simple products. You don't even have to buy the eco-friendly products, even though I do, but you can mix simple compounds, which we teach you on our website as well, using lemon juice and alcohol and vinegar and water and baking soda. You can make all kinds of home cleaning products and clean every surface in your home. So that's something else that's very easy and manageable. What are you putting in, on, and around you? Start with that and bring the whole family into it because it's a fun new project. You know, the way we were is in the past, and we can whine and say, oh, but I love this, you know, but it's like, this is new. This is the beginning. This is a new century. And think of it as, you know, a new dawn, and embrace it with enthusiasm and know that it's going to have a positive impact on you and your family and your health and how you age.
Great, thank you. I have another question over here, and as I hand the microphone, I'm just going to ask Dr. Lyerly this question, and maybe Dr. Birnbaum can answer it as well. Can you tell us about the puberty rate, what's happening in the United States? Where did it start, say, 25 years ago, or later than that, and where is it now? Because I sort of suspect that we have a younger group of women, and girls, I should say, that are going into puberty, and maybe it's because of the effect of this.
And Lindy, also, can we also ask our questioners to stand up, please, when you ask your question? Thank you very much.
So I'll take that. It's clear that the initiation of puberty, especially for girls, has dropped dramatically. Now, some of this is related to the fact that, we have enough to eat. 100 years ago, not everybody did, so some of it's related to nutrition. But we are now finding young girls as early as 7 years of old with little breast buds. By 8 years of old, about 50% or more of girls in this country now have breast buds. I don't know about you, but I know that's too young for my granddaughter. And I think that there's a clear drop in the age of puberty that has been demonstrated in this country. There are some ethnic differences. African American girls appear to start earlier than Hispanic girls, who start a little bit earlier than Caucasian girls. But by the age of 8, significant numbers of all girls have started into puberty.
Do we know why?
Not exactly. I think there are probably a multitude of reasons. One is diet. We do know that a big problem we have in this country right now is overweight and obesity, and that may be part of it, but it's not the whole story. So that there are studies now showing associations between chemicals that are present in our blood or in our bodies and earlier onset of puberty. And for all of those studies that we have in human populations, observational studies, there is animal experimental work which provides the biological plausibility to what we're seeing.
Hi, my name is Janet Noodleman. I'm with the Breast Cancer Fund, and I want to thank the panel and the sponsors. It was such a wonderful presentation, all of you, and your energy is really inspiring. So my question is for Susan and Debbie, and maybe Lindy will want to weigh in a little bit as well, and that is, you're presenting such an incredibly important role model in the bipartisan nature of what you're doing here today. And, we're all suffering from and profoundly disappointed by how partisan the Congress has become. I just had the great pleasure of meeting with John Dingell earlier this morning with Fran, and it just broke my heart when he spoke about a time when both parties were actually trying to do something. And it feels like cancer prevention, is an issue that both parties should be able to get behind. I mean, cancer is the great equalizer, unfortunately, and I'm wondering if you have any advice or words of wisdom as to how we actualize this vision that you've presented today.
Thank you for your comments and what you all do, too. Debbie will, I'm sure, want to add to this, but you're looking at a group right here of spouses who are great proponents and activists for this very cause. And so we've gathered the right people in the room, and that brings the partisan level down a great deal because we truly are all friends. We share our stories with one another. We know each other's lives and their families' stories. But you're right, cancer is the great equalizer. And there is no question that you have a great voice here, certainly by engaging spouses, something Debbie alluded to earlier.
Well, and everybody knows that John and I have been two of the people that totally believe in bipartisanship. I think part of it is that people don't know each other anymore. Members don't live here. Spouses don't move here anymore. They go home, and when you don't know people, it's much easier to demonize them. And I think it makes me sad that healthcare has become such a political issue in this country, because I am someone that thinks that everybody should have access to affordable, quality healthcare, and how we do it has become one of the issues that divides us. And I wish the women could run the country, because I think women do a better job. We go at things differently, but we don't. Someday we're going to have a woman president, Republican or Democratic, but we just have to keep trying. That's what we're doing here, and we're going to keep doing it.
We have just one more question on this side. Talking about the bipartisanship, one thing about Congressional Families Cancer Prevention Program, which I'm proud to be the executive director of, is that we have spouses that have been here for many, many years, and then we're constantly bringing new people in. So the cancer prevention really has brought people together and continues to do so since 1991. And I want to, we have one last question here from one of our newest spouses.
Hi, I'm Julie Dan Schneider from Chicago. Ideally, prevention is the goal, but assuming a woman does get breast cancer, how do you navigate through and identify what treatment options and what doctors and resources you have, especially someone who doesn't have access to, certain education or the financial wherewithal to easily pursue it? How would you recommend that they proceed?
Key thing is to find someone that you can communicate with effectively. And I think the key thing, in my own opinion, is to really find a partner in your healthcare, in the sense that there are many, many options, but you have to find someone with the expert knowledge, but also the capacity to listen to you and understand your priorities and work with you to find strategies that are going to be most effective to deliver what are the things that are important to you, the types of care, the pros and cons of the different decisions, the consequences and side effects of various therapies. All of those, the perspective should be, you should be the one making those decisions, being informed, being engaged with a responsible partner. So for me, the best outcomes occur when individuals find that type of relationship in the healthcare system. And again, the process is probably not ideal today, but the hope would be that we find strategies to improve that and make that type of experience accessible to everyone.
Well, we want to thank Fran Drescher, Drs. Linda Birnbaum and Kim Lyerly for their very informative educational presentations today. I want to thank you so much. You arm us. You arm us with important facts. I want to thank Susan and all my congressional friends that are here for everything that we do together and for everything we're going to keep doing together. And everybody in the audience for joining us today. This was great to actually see a turnout at Something on the Hill, because lately nobody does. It's slow down. You're going too fast. You got to make the moment last. We also encourage you to visit the Heinz Center website for more information on this subject and on this bipartisan initiative. Their website is www.heinzcenter.org. So we hope we're going to see you soon. Stay, see some friends, network. Remember Fran and her fight, and we'll see you soon.